So I don't, I don't have that kind of hang up. I'm not of the socialist type would say that private education is, we are products of private education. So I see a lot of interesting institutions coming up, but it was the responsibility of the king and ruler also to ensure that no student who wanted to genuinely learn was deprived of it. Therefore, the state in India cannot abdicate also. But the state in India has to be more imaginative in its approach to education. Like, we are equivalent to BA, BSc. I had done a PhD now, okay. Equivalent. Equivalent. So the word equivalent. So the government of India still now will never recognize me. It's equivalent to BA. It is another matter that the education that we received in Pondicherry was so grounded, was so thorough, that I could go and sit for the first time in my life for a competitive exam and get through. All India competitive exam also. In main universities also and get through. That is a different matter. But what I'm saying is that the state, the government in India must recognize the uniqueness of Indian educational experiments that are going on. Try and evolve. So you have a board which has now come up for Bharati education. Let us see how it evolves. But if that board takes some root, if it stands, because the bureaucratic pressure is also huge. Status quo is pressure of the bureaucracy. But if that board stands, then you realize, can that board gradually also recognize these unique experiments? The Gurukuls, the Ekal Vidyalayas, our own system of education in Pondicherry, the free progress system. Vishwabharati, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee had said, please don't convert it into a central university. Support it, but maintain its purity. They could not do it. They did not, because they converted it into a central university. Mother did not want Pondicherry, the center of education, to turn into a registered certified university, because she said then the experiment would go. Absolutely. If you look at Vishwabharati, you realize today where Vishwabharati stands. There is some effort at trying to recover. But 60 years, 1951, in interim parliament, the Vishwabharati bill was debated, even before the first Lok Sabha election. Now, education. Then, obviously, you have these pockets of separatism. Whether we want that complete or whether within India you demand separatism. A mentality of separatism more than physical. The peculiar demand for Azadi. I don't know what Azadi, because we were Azad in 1947. Within Azadi and Azadi, well, do we value that freedom that is hard earned? And finally, whether we can get over that sense of indifference that has been that has grown in this last so many decades. Of course, I leave this out also. If you want me to pointedly point it out, communism continues to remain a problem, a headache. It's not a, it wields influence disproportionate to its political representation, because it has deep roots within the Indian academia and intelligentsia. And I was I'm always very presently surprised to read this letter to Amal that Sri Aurobindo wrote on September 19th, 1950, 3 months before. He says that naturally I am in agreement with the views expressed about communism in the manifesto. What was that manifesto? Manifesto was, it was drafted by Minu Masani. Very interesting. You see, Sri Aurobindo had an entire line open to all of these people. Minu Masani, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, Morarji Desai, Jayaprakash Narayan on this side. On that side, Surendra Mohan Ghosh, who was of the Congress, Bengal Pradesh Congress, who was a disciple also. He says, I am in agreement with the views expressed about communism in the manifesto. And that manifesto was a manifesto for the defense of democracy and independence in Asia. And this was drafted by Swatantra Party leader Minu Masani. But Sri Aurobindo says, whatever is done must be something. They are trying to put together a group. even Sitaram Goel, Ram Swarup were all part of this. Sitaram Goel was one of the foremost, he was one of the activists in this. And Sri Aurobindo says, whatever is done must be something strong and effective, a blow that can tell. Otherwise, the communist movement has become so powerful that it can feed upon the shocks one tries to give it, as one can see in the tussle that is going on in the UNO. Then he says, at the end, of course, I agree with Desai as regards, he says in this, that you need to include socialists like Jayaprakash. And at the end he says, of course, I agree with Desai as regards our standing on the side of Western democracies. I think as a practitioner of real politics, Sri Aurobindo was a master. And this is September 1950. So I'm not going to agree to people who say that, he had withdrawn, he had no more interest in politics, and had just gone off to that level. He was in that level, but he had a solid grip of what is happening. And I think he was very clear on this. No sentimentalism, no false sense of morality. What is good for India, that must be done. And at that point of time, our stand must be clear. We stand on the side of Western democracies. So it's a very interesting thing, Sometimes this Communist Manifesto and Sri Aurobindo's point that a blow must be given, which must be telling. It should not be a half-hearted blow. So that's it. At the end, of course, I have a very interesting letter here. I'm trying to avoid answering questions. So you see, 3:30, then we can have tea and then I can leave. I have a very interesting letter here. Letter written by the mother to Indira Gandhi. Shall I read the French and then the English? Just to show that I know French. Sorry. Okay, no, sorry. I'll just read the English, but I can read the French also. To Indira, the Lord wants India to be great and free. In an ardent faith lies true salvation. In the last analysis, the Supreme Lord does everything. We have to be faithful instruments. Blessings, the mother. Now, she writes on 14th September 1983 to Shyam Sundar. Dear Sri Shyam Sundar, I have received your letter wishing to publish the mother's message given to me on 29th August 1972. I have no objection to its being published. Being close to the mother, you would be in a better position to know what she meant by a great and free India. I would say it meant that the Indian people should be more alive to their rich philosophical and cultural heritage and try to observe these high ideals in their daily life. This would strengthen us individually and help us to build a strong nation which would continue our long and ancient tradition of tolerance. We must be firmly rooted in the soil of India, but be ever ready to take and adopt anything that is good and relevant to us from elsewhere. I think it's a beautiful letter, but unfortunately Indira Gandhi would find no place in the Congress today, and she would be rejected by the communists. I think that is what is the one of the banes of our politics today, is when mainstream political parties start behaving like fringe. And when they try and embed in you a sense that the rich philosophical and cultural heritage and are negated, are nowhere, have no import, and trying to observe these high ideals in your daily life labels you as a reactionary. So, well, I just wanted to, this is a beautiful letter I had in my collection. I just thought I'll share. I mean, those who need to reflect should reflect. And because tolerance is not one-sided. Today, those who are being labeled as intolerant were in any case suppressed for the last 70 years. Ordinary people. So, I don't know whether I have made any sense. It becomes extremely difficult to speak on Sri Aurobindo and the future of India, but as he says, and I think this is something which we need to keep repeating to ourselves, But again, somebody will say he has written it in 1918, it has no relevance today. After that, 40 times he has revised what he has said. I don't know, but this is something which we need to keep reading. Amid all the mist of confusion, there is still the possibility of a new twilight. Not of an evening, but a morning Yuga Sandhya. India of the ages is not dead, nor has she spoken her last creative word. She lives and has still something to do for herself and the human peoples. And that which must seek now to awake is not an anglicized Oriental people, docile pupil of the West, and doomed to repeat the cycle of the Occident's success and failure, but still the ancient, immemorable Shakti, recovering her deepest self, lifting her head higher towards the supreme source of light and strength, and turning to discover the complete meaning and a vaster form of a dharma. So I think, friends, we are at this crucial Yuga Sandhya, a morning twilight. And I think very interesting things are happening, will continue to happen. And ultimately, whatever we understand of Sri Aurobindo's vision of India is going to happen. And as Mother said, fortunately, not because we are there, it is going to happen in any case. So we do our bit. So thank you so much. I absolutely believe we should have an education ministry, and it should not be education and culture ministry separate. It should not be culture and tourism separate, culture separate. Absolutely. So I think we need to raise this more and more. This has to develop and evolve into a critical narrative. Yes. For example, my friend is here. This citizenship thing. You see, it came up to a critical. It's another matter that Janasangh had from 1951 we have been saying that we will grant. But you see, that entire narrative came up to a critical point. Many such narratives have, one small, like for example, designating bamboo as grass. This I know because, for example, the Center for Civil Society, etc., they worked, we had this. At that time, Anilji was the environment minister. And it came up to a critical level, and then it happened. I believe in this. Though I am a political activist, and like Mother keeps says, rise above the political party. Yes, but we have to function within a certain structure and system. I am a political activist, but I say that social activism on these, in order to alter the narrative, is very required. We need to have clear-cut Ministry of Education. Because HRD is so amorphous. No? I mean, you get. And when it was formed, we were students, we were in the ashram, it took us some time to understand what is this human resource development. So you see everything as a resource. I see there's a lack of imagination, tremendous lack of imagination, lot of status quo pressure. Yes, Jana. Correct. Yeah. You see, what is, means what I'm saying, you're correct. You see, what is happening is, I'm talking about our collective since independence. Like I said, we did not take initiative to overhaul our education structure. You formed IITs, but your universities continue to function under the company model. It was a company model of universities, basically, which you had to turn out. Then they became examination centers. Then later on you said, okay, we make them also research centers. But you never really thought over on how to overhaul your system of education. Now, after you brought in the NEP, it is only after, in 1988, Kirit Bhai was the last person. You imagine after 88, this is the first time in the last 2 years, you had one round, then the second round came. But at least, yes, that what this has done is, you have democratized the first step, you have democratized the feedback on how our education system should be. Large number of people, students, and educationists consulted.